Agatha Raisin and the Wrinkles of Deception. She spotted a single wrinkle in the mirror and followed it straight into a clinic where beauty hid something far more dangerous. This is Agatha Raisin and the Wrinkles of Deception. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Your comments make this cozy corner feel even warmer, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next mystery. Agatha Raisin discovered the wrinkle at precisely 8 minutes past 7. She knew the time because the kitchen clock behind her gave a smug little tick just as she leaned closer to the mirror, cigarette in one hand and mascara wand in the other. There it was, an unmistakable, treacherous crease running from the corner of her mouth like a signature of defeat. She froze. Mascara paused mid-air, as if movement might deepen it further. The kettle hissed impatiently on the counter, and Hodge, curled on a chair as though posing for a catalogue of indifferent household pets, gave his tail a slow, pitying thump. Agatha glared at both kettle and cat before returning to the betrayal of her own reflection. The wrinkle, annoyingly, refused to vanish under intimidation. She tugged the skin taut with one finger. It smoothed out obligingly, only to reappear the instant she let go. "Absolutely not," she muttered. She had been preparing a suitably barbed remark for the WI committee meeting, something elegant involving Doris Simpson's appalling cardigans, but now the words deserted her. Vanity elbowed its way to the front of her mind, pushing all other considerations aside. She exhaled a faint puff of smoke, which curled miserably against the bathroom tiles before dissipating. As if on cue, a sharp flap echoed from downstairs. Something had come through the letterbox. Agatha, still scowling, stomped down the stairs in her slippers. A glossy flyer lay on the mat like a taunt. She snatched it up. "Cotswold Rejuvenation Clinic, turn back time without a scalpel." The exclamation mark alone felt like a personal insult. The flyer was decorated with images of radiant women whose faces possessed the kind of smoothness only available to people who had never wrestled with village committees, cats, or the cruel judgment of former husbands. Agatha's eyes narrowed. The flyer listed a medical director named Dr. Marina Vale, accompanied by a photograph of an elegant woman whose qualifications appeared to be summarized vaguely as international expertise in advanced aesthetic science. Agatha reread the line twice, unwilling to concede how accomplished the woman looked. The flyer also boasted exclusive clientele, including television personalities, which Agatha recognized as a deliberate provocation to anyone who fancied herself socially prominent. She flicked the flyer aside and marched into the kitchen, where the kettle had begun clicking irritably. Hodge lifted his head, staring with the cool detachment of a creature born immune to insecurities. "Don't look at me like that," Agatha snapped, flicking ash neatly into the sink. "I am not old." Hodge blinked, which she chose to interpret as agreement rather than resignation. She poured hot water into her mug and attempted to focus on the evening ahead, but the wrinkle hovered in her thoughts like an uninvited guest. The kitchen smelled of tea, cigarette smoke, and the faint lemon polish lingering from yesterday's cleaning spree. An effort she now saw had been wasted if her own face insisted on collapsing. By the time Agatha reached the WI hall, the atmosphere had settled into its usual blend of chatter and low-level competitiveness. The wooden chairs stood in unforgiving rows, the air humming with murmurs about committee responsibilities and upcoming bake sales. Doris Simpson, wrapped in one of her aggressively cheerful cardigans, was already presiding over a gaggle of women near the front. Agatha took a seat with deliberate poise, ignoring the twinge in her confidence. She was adjusting her scarf when she heard Doris's unmistakable nasal whisper. "Some women try far too hard to look young," Doris murmured, with an exaggerated sigh. "It's rather sad, really." A few polite titters answered her. Agatha kept her back straight, but her jaw clenched. The meeting droned on, its agenda as uninspiring as usual, but Agatha barely registered the discussion. Her mind revolved around the wrinkle, the flyer, and Doris's smugness. Halfway through a tedious debate about tablecloth colours for the spring fete, her mobile rang. The hall fell silent as she fumbled through her handbag. Roy Silver's bright voice burst into her ear. "Darling, you will not believe the frightful week I've had. Oh, and I ran into that producer. Yes, the one from the channel. And he said you were wonderfully mature. Isn't that hilarious?" Agatha's stomach dropped. "Mature?" she hissed. "Roy, must you repeat that?" Roy, oblivious, continued babbling until she switched her phone off altogether. The WI members stared, some judgmentally, others smugly. Agatha offered a brittle smile, cheeks burning. After the meeting finally limped to its conclusion, Agatha strode out into the night with the fury of a woman betrayed by her own cells. She could almost hear Doris's voice echoing behind her. As she walked home, she replayed Roy's careless compliment. Wonderfully mature. The words grew heavier with every step. Her pace quickened. Vanity was not merely stung, it was in full revolt. By the time she reached her cottage, she had made up her mind with military decisiveness. She marched into the sitting room, dropped her handbag with a thud, and retrieved the flyer from the kitchen table. Hodge peeked over the arm of the sofa, skeptical. "I am going to this clinic," she announced dramatically. "I shall emerge looking 10 years younger, and all of Carsley will be appalled by my beauty." The cat resumed licking his paw, undisturbed by her proclamation. Agatha sank onto the sofa and examined the flyer again. Dr. Marina Vale's serene smile seemed to beckon her. The clinic claimed it used cutting-edge treatments, which sounded suitably scientific and vaguely glamorous. The small print mentioned nothing of discomfort, risk, or wrinkles with malicious determination. Agatha felt a flicker of giddy anticipation. Still, a faint murmur of unease whispered beneath her bravado. Doris had mentioned rumours about clinics using things not approved over here, but Doris also believed that microwaves could scramble one's moral compass. Agatha told herself not to be influenced by villagers whose cosmetic expertise extended no further than supermarket moisturizers. She folded the flyer with crisp precision and placed it on the mantelpiece like a proclamation of war. Tomorrow, she would telephone the clinic. She would book a consultation. She would demonstrate to Doris and the WI and Roy Silver and anyone else who dared snicker that Agatha Raisin was not fading quietly into middle age. Agatha lit another cigarette and leaned back, allowing the smoke to drift lazily toward the ceiling. The glow from the lamp softened the edges of the room, casting gentle light on her collection of magazines, her half-read crime novel, and the half-hearted attempt at a houseplant she had adopted months ago. Everything appeared ordinary, reassuring, yet the flyer gleamed like an intruder promising transformation. Hodge leapt onto her lap, curling into a warm, indifferent lump. She stroked him absently, mind racing ahead to imagined scenes of admiration and envy. But vanity could not quite dispel suspicion. The vagueness of the clinic's qualifications nagged at her. Why did the flyer avoid specifics? Where exactly had Dr. Marina Vale gained her international expertise? Agatha squinted at the fine print again. No addresses, no detailed credentials, just a telephone number and a promise of rejuvenation. She inhaled slowly, considering. Curiosity, always her most dangerous trait, began to mingle with determination. Perhaps the clinic held more secrets than mere beauty tricks. She tapped the flyer against her knee. "Wrinkle," she muttered, as though addressing an enemy. "We shall see who wins." Hodge responded with a disgruntled murrup, which she interpreted as support. She flicked ash neatly into a saucer, already imagining the triumphant moment she would saunter into the WI hall, radiant and unrecognizable. She could almost picture Doris's jaw dropping. The fantasy pleased her immensely. Agatha rose, stretched, and turned off the lamp. The room dimmed, leaving the flyer's glossy sheen catching the faint light from the hallway. She paused, staring at it one last time, sensing that the simple act of picking it up had nudged her life onto a new, unpredictable path. She would chase youth, yes, but perhaps what she found would be far stranger than smoother skin. Tomorrow, she told herself firmly, everything would begin. Agatha Raisin was still muttering to herself when she pushed open the doors of the Carsley Village Hall. "A clinic launch in this place," she grumbled. "It'll probably involve lukewarm tea and a raffle." The moment she stepped inside, her prediction appeared painfully accurate. Folding chairs had been arranged in slightly crooked rows, lit by fairy lights that curled half-heartedly along the beams, leftovers from the harvest supper months before. A large urn of steam wheezed in the corner like an asthmatic dragon. The faint smell of dust and boiled water mingled in the air. It was not, Agatha felt, the sort of venue for glamour. Mrs. Bloxby greeted her with mild surprise. "Agatha, dear, I didn't expect—" "Yes, well, this is research," Agatha snapped, smoothing her hair. "Besides, someone has to raise the standard around here." She glanced around with distaste. The hall had seen countless parish meetings, children's pantomimes, and the occasional scandal when the Women's Institute experimented with international cuisine. It did not suggest beauty or rejuvenation. Still, she had dragged Mrs. Blocksby along in the hope of appearing sensible rather than desperate. The chairs filled quickly with women of varying ages, all pretending they had merely wandered in out of curiosity. Doris Simpson sat smugly near the front, cardigan aggressively pink tonight. Agatha shot her a warning glare, which Doris met with a sweet, poisonous smile. The hum of village chatter rose and fell until the door at the side opened, and a hush rippled across the room. Dr. Marina Vale entered as though she had stepped off a magazine cover. Tall, elegant, with immaculately smooth skin and a faintly exotic cadence to her voice, she carried herself with serene confidence. Her eyes swept the audience, not with arrogance, but with a kind of benevolent promise. Even Agatha, poised to criticize, felt a small tug of admiration. Marina took the center of the hall, framed awkwardly by a banner that read, "Turn Back Time Without a Scalpel." "Good evening," she began, her voice soft but carrying easily. "I know the cruelty of time," she said frankly, and several women straightened instinctively. "Our faces tell stories we may not wish to share, but modern science," she gestured gracefully, "can help us choose which chapters remain visible." The hall consumed each word with near-hypnotic attention. Agatha folded her arms, unimpressed by the theatrics yet undeniably curious. Marina continued, speaking about injectable boosters, light therapy, and non-surgical harmonization. When she mentioned the privilege of treating high-profile clients, including television personalities, a murmur surged through the room. Doris whispered loudly to her neighbor, "Imagine us mixing with celebrities," which made Agatha grit her teeth. After the introductory spiel, Marina invited questions. Mrs. Petrie, the vicar's housekeeper, asked anxiously whether the treatments involved chemicals from abroad. Marina smiled serenely. "All treatments comply with UK safety standards," she said, though she paused for the briefest moment before adding, "My experience overseas simply allows me to bring a broader perspective." Agatha caught the hesitation, a subtle flicker behind the polished composure, but the audience seemed satisfied. Marina then introduced her staff, Paula Trent, the head beautician, brisk and tight-lipped with the air of a woman who lived on black coffee and disdain, and Jill Potter, a pale young assistant who kept glancing at her watch as though expecting the ceiling to fall in. Paula nodded curtly at the audience, her expression suggesting she doubted any of them were worthy of beauty enhancements. Jill gave a nervous wave and nearly dropped the tray she carried. "Tonight," Marina announced, "we will demonstrate our advanced skin analysis system. May I have a volunteer?" Before Mrs. Blocksby could gently discourage her, Agatha shot her hand in the air. "Me," she declared. If Doris planned to smirk, she would give her something worth smirking at. The demonstration table was set on a small stage, cluttered with a magnifying lamp, monitor, and an array of labelled bottles. As Agatha settled onto a stool, she whispered to Mrs. Blocksby, "If I end up looking like a laboratory specimen, remind me to sue them." Mrs. Blocksby patted her shoulder sympathetically. Paula adjusted the lamp with military precision. "Please hold still," she said. The harsh white light snapped on, illuminating Agatha's face with unflinching clarity. Every pore, every faint crease, every misbehaving hair was projected onto the screen behind her. Gasps and muffled giggles erupted. Doris made a small, choked noise of delight. Agatha felt her cheeks flame. She heard someone cough at the back of the hall, James Lacey. Agatha stiffened. Of all the people to witness her humiliation, it had to be him. "Oh, what fun," Roy Silver would have said, but Agatha did not share the sentiment. "Your skin," Paula announced, tapping at the monitor, "shows signs of environmental stress and insufficient collagen retention." "Rubbish," Agatha barked. "I use moisturizer." Paula offered a tight professional smile. "Of course." Marina stepped forward smoothly. "This is not unusual," she assured the audience. "Many women experience these signs earlier than expected, even our lovely volunteer." Agatha felt the word lovely was a thin veil over middle-aged. She forced herself to laugh too loudly. The hall responded with mild amusement, which only deepened her mortification. After the demonstration, Agatha left the stage with stiff dignity. Mrs. Blocksby guided her back to her seat, offering gentle murmurs of consolation. Doris leaned over with a saccharine tone. "So brave of you to volunteer, Agatha. Not everyone would have the courage. Indeed, Agatha replied, not everyone has the face for it. Doris's smile faltered, which pleased Agatha slightly. The presentation continued with details about membership packages, treatment plans, and special introductory offers. Paula explained the necessity of signing comprehensive consent forms before any procedure. These protect both the client and the clinic, she said, emphasizing the phrase as though rehearsed. Jill fidgeted beside her, nodding too quickly. At one point, an elderly villager asked Marina what sort of work she had done overseas. Marina hesitated, a tiny but unmistakable pause before replying, "Private clinics in Europe, very exclusive, difficult to discuss." She moved on swiftly, but Agatha filed this away with interest. Secrets always left a scent. When the presentation concluded, the hall erupted into gossip. Women clustered around the sample displays, testing serums and asking Jill nervous questions. Paula answered queries with clipped efficiency, occasionally giving Jill a warning look when the girl stumbled over explanations. Agatha observed the dynamic with a shrewd eye. Paula seemed over-invested in maintaining control. Jill appeared terrified of making errors. Agatha approached Marina, who greeted her with an elegant nod. "Thank you for volunteering," Marina said. "You were wonderfully composed." "I always am," Agatha replied. "Tell me, Doctor, are your treatments truly non-surgical?" Marina's smile remained serene. "Entirely. Precision techniques, nothing invasive." "And your qualifications?" "International," Marina said lightly. "My training spans several countries." It was such a careful answer that it practically begged more questions. Before Agatha could press further, James Lacey appeared at her elbow. "Interesting evening," he remarked. His expression hovered between curiosity and embarrassment. "Oh, were you watching?" Agatha asked coolly. "Hard not to," he admitted. "The magnification was impressive." Agatha bristled. "Yes, well, any decent camera adds years, even to me." James offered a diplomatic smile. "You handled it well." Then, almost shyly, "Are you considering a treatment?" Agatha lifted her chin. "Possibly." His eyebrows rose. "Nothing wrong with how you look." Flattery rarely softened Agatha's resolve, but this comment came close. As the event wound down, Agatha felt her humiliation gradually harden into determination. She gathered one of Marina's brochures, its glossy promises gleaming under the hall lights. She spotted Jill hurrying toward the exit, checking her watch anxiously, while Paula scolded a volunteer for misplacing a jar of samples. Marina drifted through the remaining guests like a calming breeze, charming but inscrutable. On the walk home, Agatha clutched the brochure tightly. She felt the weight of the evening pressing on her, the laughter, the lights, the smooth confidence of Marina, the brittle sharpness of Paula, the nervous flutters of Jill. Beneath it all ran a thread of something unsettled, a faint tremor she couldn't yet name. But she did know one thing. She would book that consultation. And when she returned to the WI Hall, she would do so with a face that left Doris speechless. Agatha Raisin's heels clicked sharply against the immaculate pavement as she approached the Cotswold Rejuvenation Clinic. "If this place doesn't make me look younger," she muttered, "it had better at least offer decent coffee." She paused before the glass doors, which slid open with a dignified hush. Inside, the air felt cooler than any February morning had a right to feel. Crisp, scented faintly of antiseptic disguised by candles that seemed determined to suggest sophistication. The walls were pristine white, not a smudge or fingerprint to be seen. A low, calming melody drifted through the lobby, as though the building itself breathed in measured, beautiful rhythm. Agatha, wrapped in her leopard print scarf and wearing heels that clicked too loudly for such a quiet space, immediately felt both overdressed and confident, an awkward combination she carried with surprising pride. She strode to the reception desk, where Jill Potter was attempting to wrestle an appointment book into some semblance of order. The girl's hands trembled so visibly that the pen she held wobbled like a frightened needle. "Oh, Mrs. Raisin," Jill stammered. "Welcome back. Welcome. Procedure? Consultation? Appointment." "Take a breath, dear," Agatha said, softening slightly. "I'm not here for surgery, yet." Jill gave a tiny, squeaky laugh that did nothing to calm her. From behind the desk, Paula Trent appeared with the controlled fury of a woman who consumed irritation for breakfast. "Jill," she snapped, "the forms are in alphabetical order. I do not understand how this continues to defeat you." She then offered Agatha a tight smile that suggested customer service was a legal obligation rather than a personal inclination. "Mrs. Raisin, Dr. Vale will see you shortly." Agatha noticed a clipboard with today's appointments. One name leapt out immediately: Belinda Hartley. Once the darling of daytime television, she had quietly vanished from the public eye in recent years. Agatha leaned closer. Beside Belinda's name, written in a more urgent hand, was a small red asterisk. A discreet door to the right bore a brass plaque reading VIP Lounge. So the television personalities did come here. A tiny thrill of vindication warmed Agatha's chest. Jill followed her gaze. "We, try to keep our high-profile clients comfortable," she whispered, eyes darting nervously as though expecting Paula to leap from the shadows. "High profile?" Agatha echoed. "I suppose that makes me low profile, yet radiant." Jill blinked several times. "Oh, yes. Well, you look perfectly radiant already." "Enough." Paula's voice sliced through the moment. "Mrs. Raisin, please take a seat." Agatha lowered herself onto a pale grey sofa, so spotless she feared leaving a mark. The room felt eerily stage-managed. Not a magazine out of place, not a fingerprint on the glass table, not a whisper of age permitted. Even the clinic brochures were perfectly fanned out, promising smoothness, firmness, rejuvenation, words that simultaneously comforted and threatened. The door behind her opened. "Mrs. Raisin?" Marina Vale stood poised, immaculate in a tailored suit that somehow made the entire clinic seem inadequate in comparison. "Do come in." Agatha followed Marina into a consultation room that was somehow even whiter than the lobby. A soft lamp glowed in the corner, its light carefully calibrated not to create unflattering shadows. A chair sat beside a sleek desk. Cabinets gleamed. The faint hum of a machine vibrated in the background. "Please sit," Marina said, gesturing gracefully. Agatha crossed her legs, determined not to appear nervous. "So," she began, "turn me into a young woman again." Marina smiled, not broadly, but with the subtle confidence of a woman long accustomed to hopeful vanity. "My aim is refinement, not reinvention. We follow stringent protocols. Nothing we do here is unsafe." She folded her hands elegantly. "I recommend a personalized program of non-surgical rejuvenation, dermal boosters, targeted light therapy, and collagen stimulation, all entirely natural in effect." "It sounds terribly expensive," Agatha said. Marina's smile did not falter. "Quality always is." Agatha wished she had a witty retort ready, but the truth was she felt oddly reassured, even as the other part of her, the suspicious and investigative part, catalogued Marina's careful phrasing. Stringent protocols, nothing unsafe. Promises made with the comforting firmness of a sales pitch. Before she could respond, Marina stood. "I'll collect a pamphlet for you." She left the room, the door closing with a whisper. Agatha glanced around. Alone, her curiosity stirred immediately. She rose and wandered to a cabinet that had not been fully shut. The drawer hung open by a fraction, just enough to tempt someone with poor impulse control. She pulled it gently. Inside lay several folders. One, its tab, clearly marked, caught her eye. B. Hartley. Urgent. She felt a twinge of something close to triumph. She tugged the folder open a few centimeters. Medical charts, photographs, something resembling a consent form with red annotations. Before she could fully comprehend the contents, her gaze drifted to a small metal refrigerator on the opposite counter. It was padlocked. A tape label identified its contents only with coded numbers and letters. The atmosphere in the room shifted suddenly, not physically, but emotionally. A hint of unease threaded through the air. Agatha's hand hovered over the folder, temptation rising. What urgent matter could possibly relate to Belinda Hartley? Footsteps echoed faintly. Agatha snapped the drawer shut and returned to her chair with the guilty poise of a cat that had knocked over a vase. But the footsteps did not come from the door. They continued past the room and down the corridor, accompanied by two voices, one Marina's, recognizable even through the muffled wall. The other voice was sharp, accusing. "You ruined me once," the woman hissed. "You won't do it again." Marina's reply was low, urgent. "Keep your voice down." I warned you. You don't understand. A scuffle of footsteps, a door closing sharply, and silence. Agatha's heart quickened. She leaned slightly toward the door, straining to hear more, but no further words came. The hall beyond had settled into its artificially serene stillness. Moments later, Marina returned, composed once more, carrying a pamphlet. "My apologies," she said. "Staff matter. Nothing you need to worry about." Agatha lifted an eyebrow. "Sounded rather heated." Marina placed the pamphlet on the desk, her expression unreadable. "In any workplace, disagreements happen. Now, your treatment plan." Before they could continue, the consultation was abruptly interrupted by the sharp ringing of the lobby telephone, followed by Jill's anxious voice. "Dr. Vale? Urgent call for you. From the supplier. You said to be notified immediately." Marina exhaled, the faintest crack in her calm facade. "Excuse me again, Mrs. Raisin." She swept out of the room, closing the door behind her. Left alone again, Agatha stood once more, though this time she resisted the urge to pry. Instead, she examined the clinic from this single room, trying to understand the subtle sensations chipping at her instincts. The place was too controlled, too polished, she searched for the word, sanitized. It was as if the clinic wished to erase not only age, but any trace of human imperfection. And yet behind the spotless surfaces, she sensed tension, as though resentment simmered beneath the smooth white walls. She approached the small window overlooking the reception area. From this vantage point, she could see Jill fumbling with papers while Paula delivered a quiet but blistering reprimand. Paula's stiff shoulders and clipped gestures radiated hostility. Jill's shrinking posture spoke of guilt or fear. Agatha retreated from the window. She had come seeking beauty, but she was leaving with something far more compelling: suspicion. When Marina returned, her composure had been restored, though her smile felt pressurized. "Here is the information, Mrs. Raisin. Please read through it and let us know if you wish to proceed." Agatha accepted the pamphlet. "Oh, I'll be proceeding," she said, "but I like to know everything, especially about who might ruin whom." For the first time, Marina's expression wavered. "We all have pasts, Mrs. Raisin. Not all of them define the present." "Some do," Agatha replied lightly. As she stepped back into the lobby, Paula glanced up. Her eyes narrowed. Jill dropped a stack of forms and scrambled to collect them. Belinda Hartley's name remained visible on the appointment list, marked as urgent. Outside, the glass doors closed behind her with a hiss, sealing the clinic in its pristine isolation. Agatha breathed in the ordinary air of Casserly, imperfect, lively, and smelling faintly of distant chimney smoke. The contrast sharpened her resolve. There was something very wrong behind those perfect white walls, and Agatha Raisin intended to find out what. Agatha Raisin's morning had already begun badly. First, she'd been required to fill in a medical questionnaire so detailed it might as well have asked for her childhood insecurities and the dates of every biscuit she'd ever consumed. Second, she'd worn her best lipstick only for Jill to tell her she would have to remove all makeup for the procedure. By the time she stepped into the clinic lobby, she was simmering with irritation and ready to assign blame to the nearest available target. The clinic, however, was in no state to impress her. Today it hummed with a strange, scattered tension. Reception was unusually crowded, phones rang persistently, the waiting room buzzed with subdued, fretful chatter. Jill Potter appeared from behind a display cabinet carrying a tray of sample creams, which promptly slipped from her hands. Tiny jars scattered across the marble floor like startled insects. "Sorry, sorry," Jill squeaked, dropping to gather them. Her hands trembled so violently that one jar rolled under the sofa, disappearing entirely. "For heaven's sake, Jill," Paula hissed, swooping in with the efficiency of a hawk. "How difficult is it to carry a tray?" She knelt and retrieved the runaway jar with a look that suggested she might throttle anyone who asked the wrong question. Agatha folded her arms. "If this is the level of coordination here, I may just keep my wrinkles." Paula shot her a thin smile. "Your room will be ready shortly, Mrs. Raisin." Agatha was preparing a scathing reply when the lobby shifted around her. A ripple of attention passed through the room. The glass doors opened, and Belinda Hartley stepped inside, or rather, glided inside. She wore oversized sunglasses large enough to hide half her face, and a scarf wrapped dramatically around her hairline despite the mild weather. Her lips were painted a glossy plum shade, though the rest of her complexion looked unnervingly sallow beneath the makeup. Belinda ignored the reception queue entirely, sweeping past Paula as though she were a coat rack. Jill stood to greet her, but Belinda waved her off with a languid, dismissive flick of her wrist. "Straight to the VIP lounge," she said. Her voice, once famous for cheerful morning broadcasts, now sounded frayed. Paula stepped forward. "Miss Hartley, Dr. Vale will see you as soon as—" "Now!" Belinda snapped. The VIP door opened, and she vanished inside. "Charming," Agatha muttered. "Fame does dreadful things to people." Paula didn't reply. She looked too tense even for sarcasm. Moments later, Marina appeared, her expression carefully composed but with a shadow of something strained. "Mrs. Raisin, we're ready for you." Agatha followed her to a treatment room, its spotless whiteness seeming colder than usual. She lay reluctantly on the treatment couch, eyeing the tray of instruments with suspicion. "Needles make me look pale," she declared, "and clammy." Marina adjusted the overhead lamp. "You'll barely feel anything. That's what dentists say before they drill through your soul." Marina's lips twitched. "Try to relax." Agatha attempted relaxation for approximately 3 seconds before fidgeting again. The room felt too quiet, the music too soft, her own breathing too loud. She shut her eyes, but opened them again when she sensed movement outside. Then, a shout, a sharp, panicked cry from somewhere down the corridor. Agatha sat up. What was that? The music cut off abruptly, leaving a heavy stillness. Then came hurried footsteps, a clatter of equipment, a voice calling, "Get the crash kit!" A trolley rattled past the open doorway, pushed by a pale-faced nurse. "What on earth?" Agatha swung her legs off the couch. Suddenly Paula burst into the room, breathless, eyes wide and unguarded. "Mrs. Raisin, you need to vacate this area immediately." Agatha bristled. "Why? I'm in the middle of—" There's been a medical emergency." Paula grabbed her arm, guiding her toward the door with a forcefulness that left no room for argument. Agatha craned her neck as they hurried into the corridor. Through a half-open door she glimpsed a scene that froze her mid-step. An IV stand knocked sideways, a chair overturned, and upon the treatment couch, Belinda Hartley's arm dangling limply over the side. Marina knelt beside her, pressing urgently on the woman's chest, counting aloud with cracking breaths. The elegance Agatha had always associated with her was gone, replaced by frantic, unglamorous effort. Another nurse attempted to adjust a monitor, which let out a shrill alarm. Agatha's heart thudded. "Good Lord!" "Keep moving," Paula snapped, pushing her farther down the corridor. Within minutes, though it felt like seconds, the clinic filled with a startling collision of worlds. Paramedics, police officers, and bewildered clients ushered out in clusters. The pristine, shadowless corridors trembled under the weight of real crisis. Bill Wong arrived next, shoulders tense beneath his jacket. When he spotted Agatha near the corner, his expression became a mixture of resignation and disbelief. "Why?" he asked wearily. "Am I not surprised to find you here?" "Because trouble follows me like stray dogs," Agatha replied. "But I didn't cause this one." Bill rubbed his forehead. "We received a report of a sudden collapse during a cosmetic procedure." His tone grew clipped. "It's been declared a fatality." Agatha inhaled sharply. "Belinda?" Bill nodded grimly. "Paramedics confirmed it." For a moment, the corridor seemed to shrink around her. The scent in the air, chemical, sharp, felt different from her earlier visits. Not the usual mild disinfectant, but something stronger, something that stung faintly at the back of her throat. She glanced toward the treatment room. The door was now firmly shut, guarded by a uniformed officer. Marina appeared moments later, her composure fractured. She dabbed beneath her eyes with a tissue. "Detective Wong, it must have been an allergic reaction. She didn't disclose her full medical history. She never told us she had asthma, or that she'd had adverse reactions previously." Paula, standing stiffly beside her, muttered, "We followed protocol, patch test and everything." Jill, hovering behind them, looked stricken. I did the patch test. I thought I did. I should have a record. It should be in her file. I'll find it." Bill raised his eyebrows. "Find it?" "Yes," Jill said, voice quivering. "It should be with the consent forms, unless it wasn't filed yet." "Or wasn't done at all," Paula snapped. Jill paled. "No, I did it. I'm certain I—" "Enough," Marina said sharply. "We don't know anything yet." But Agatha was no longer listening to them. Her gaze drifted toward the door of Belinda's treatment room. And that smell, she knew it hadn't been present when she had arrived earlier. This scent was harsher, chemical, slightly metallic. Bill turned to Agatha. "Did you see anything suspicious?" "I saw chaos," she said. "Jill panicked, Paula furious, Marina unraveling, and Belinda sweeping in like a queen minutes before she died." "It may have been a tragic accident," Bill said, though he didn't sound convinced. Agatha folded her arms. "Accidents don't usually involve missing allergy forms." At this, Marina stiffened. She must have removed it from her file, or failed to sign one. Some clients are careless. Jill shook her head. "She signed something, I think. Paula rounded on her. "If you mishandled her paperwork—" "Enough," Bill said firmly. "No more speculation." An officer approached. "Dr. Vale will need to seal the room and take statements." Marina nodded, her hands trembling. "Of course. I want full transparency. We have nothing to hide." But as Agatha watched, she wasn't so sure. The fear in the clinic wasn't just shock. It was the fear of exposure. The fear of something being discovered. She leaned closer to Bill. "You smell that?" Bill sniffed. "Standard disinfectant, isn't it?" "No," Agatha whispered. "Not the same as before. Something new. Something wrong." Bill studied her expression. "Leave the investigating to us, Agatha." "I am," she said sweetly. "I'm merely thinking and observing and remembering everything," he sighed, "which is exactly what worries me." Paramedics wheeled Belinda's covered body past them. The sight drew a hush from the remaining staff. Even Paula looked shaken. As Belinda disappeared from view, Agatha felt a strange shiver of certainty. Someone in that clinic wasn't telling the truth, and Agatha Raisin intended to find which of them it was. Carsley had not enjoyed this much excitement since the vicar's prized hydrangea had been suspected of poisoning a neighbour's cat. A death at a cosmetic clinic was infinitely juicier. By mid-morning, every kitchen table, bus stop, and hedgerow in the village had become a hub of speculation. Agatha Raisin found herself the unintentional star of the gossip circuit simply by virtue of having been present when Belinda Hartley collapsed. By lunchtime, she was holding court at the Red Lion, perched on her usual bar stool like a monarch receiving supplicants. The pub was warm, dimly lit, and thrumming with chatter. Word had spread fast, faster in fact than accuracy could keep up with. A gaggle of villagers hovered nearby, pretending to examine the specials board while quite obviously eavesdropping. "So she came in drunk, then?" asked Mrs. Voice, leaning in with conspiratorial relish. "Utter nonsense," Agatha declared, though she enjoyed the crowd's attention. "If she was drunk, it was the most elegant intoxication I've ever witnessed. She looked perfectly sober. Overly dramatic, yes, but sober." Someone else piped up. "I heard she'd been blackmailing the clinic, threatening to expose them." Agatha took a thoughtful sip of her gin and tonic. "And where exactly did you hear that?" "Oh, you know," the villager said vaguely. "Around." "Around is the source of most lies," Agatha said, though she filed the rumour away instantly. If Belinda was blackmailing anyone, she'd have chosen a better setting than a consultation room. The group murmured approvingly at her wisdom. Agatha basked in the attention, pretending disinterest even as she nudged them toward more details. Every whispered theory added another layer to the swirling fog of possibilities. She steered the conversation with subtle flicks of wit and charm, all while maintaining the posture of a woman reluctantly indulging the masses. The pub door opened, letting in a gust of chilly air, and moments later, Bill Wong. He spotted her immediately and winced, as if bracing for an inevitable collision with aggravation. Agatha waved him over with regal authority. "You look exhausted," she said as he sat beside her. "That's because I am," Bill replied. "I've spent the morning interviewing half your acquaintances." "Lucky you, they're easily entertained." She pushed a fresh gin and tonic toward him, which he refused. "I'm on duty," he reminded her. "So? It's only gin." Bill pinched the bridge of his nose. "Agatha, I'm here because you were present at the clinic. I need your statement officially." "You had it yesterday." "I need it again," he said. "Properly documented, and without your editorial flourishes." Agatha sniffed. "My statements are concise." "They're novels," Bill said. "Long novels." "Fine. Ask your questions." He took out a small notebook. The coroner is leaning toward anaphylactic shock, likely triggered by an injected substance, but, Bill hesitated. The paperwork is messy. That clinic is a disaster behind its fancy facade. Consent forms unsigned, others missing altogether, and Belinda Hartley's medical disclosure sheet is nowhere to be found. Agatha raised her eyebrows. Misplaced or deliberately vanished? That, Bill said tightly, is what we need to determine. Agatha leaned in. And what about the patch test? Jill was adamant she did one. Well, Bill replied, Belinda's arms show no sign of it. Agatha felt a stir of excitement. So Jill might be lying. Or forgetful, or covering for someone else, or simply terrified. She looked like a rabbit yesterday. Yes, but rabbits don't usually work in medical settings, Agatha said sharply. What does Marina say? She's produced immaculate treatment logs, Bill said, flipping through his notebook. Precise times, dosages, everything. According to her notes, the patch test was done hours before Jill claims she even saw Belinda. Agatha's eyes gleamed. Contradictions. How delicious. Bill's patience frayed. Agatha, this is not delicious. A woman is dead. Yes, but the truth is still interesting, she insisted. He closed the notebook. Let me be clear. Do not meddle. Do not harass staff. Do not invent theories. Stay out of this investigation. Of course, Agatha said sweetly. Bill stared at her. That tone usually precedes felony-level interference. Agatha fluttered her eyelashes. I'm offended you think so little of me. When it comes to staying out of trouble, Bill said, I think of you exactly as much as you deserve. He rose from his seat. This conversation never happened. Then why did you come? Because you'd stick your nose in anyway. I might as well know what direction you're pointing it. With that, he left. Agatha took another sip of gin, smiling. She loved Bill dearly, but she also loved being right even more. She was still basking when the pub door swung open again, this time allowing a gust of energy that belonged to only one man, Charles Fraith. He sauntered in wearing a cashmere coat and looking as though he'd just returned from winning a minor duel. Aggie, he drawled, I hear your beauty clinic has killed someone. Am I too late to sign up? Agatha groaned. Honestly, Charles, must you always enter like an unwanted punctuation mark? He grinned and slid into the seat beside her. I was in London when I heard. Death, scandal, a glamorous doctor with mysterious qualifications. It all sounded terribly exciting. Naturally, I rushed here. You rushed, Agatha repeated dryly. In an open-top car. Yes, one must look dramatic, he said. So what's the gossip? Agatha recounted the essentials. The missing forms, the clinic's tension, Marina's icy calm, Paula's hostility, Jill's nervousness. Charles listened with a mixture of amusement and interest. Do you know, he mused, there might be an opportunity here. Wellness investments are the rage. That place looks slick enough. If the scandal dies down, the profits might be excellent. Agatha nearly choked on her drink. Charles, a woman just died. Yes, tragic, he said breezily, but business is business, and besides, the best way to learn about a company is from the inside. If I pose as an investor, they'll practically invite me to snoop. Agatha's irritation gave way to delight. You brilliant, shallow man. I prefer strategically charming. We'll do it, she said. You'll arrange a meeting. I'll tag along as your advisor. Charles raised an eyebrow. Advisor? To what? Fashion crimes? To fraud detection, Agatha snapped, and vanity management, and murder investigations. Charles clinked his glass against hers. Splendid. I'll call tomorrow. Later that afternoon, Agatha made her way to the vicarage for a visit with Mrs. Bloxby, who had been expecting her. The vicar's wife welcomed her with a warm smile and guided her to the sitting room, where the scent of cinnamon biscuits softened the air. You look troubled, Mrs. Bloxby said, pouring tea. Do I? I thought I looked determined. Mrs. Bloxby's eyes twinkled. There's a fine line between determination and agitation. Agatha sighed. Belinda Hartley didn't just die. She was pushed toward it by negligence or something worse, and I fully intend to find out which. Mrs. Bloxby nodded gently. Bill asked you not to interfere. Bill underestimates me, Agatha sniffed. Not at all, Mrs. Bloxby said kindly. He knows you too well. Agatha took a biscuit, though she resented how accurately Mrs. Bloxby could read her moods. She hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else. Charles is helping me infiltrate the clinic." Mrs. Blocksby blinked. "Infiltrate? As potential investors? That sounds remarkably risky." "It's not." Agatha lifted her chin. "Well, not terribly." Mrs. Blocksby hesitated, then took a seat opposite her friend. "Agatha, may I ask something plainly?" "Of course." "Is this investigation about Belinda Hartley," she asked softly, "or about your wrinkle?" Agatha's mouth fell open in outrage. "Mrs. Blocksby!" The vicar's wife held her gaze, gentle but steady. "I worry you're chasing danger because you feel vulnerable. That flyer preyed on insecurity, and now a tragedy has given your insecurity a mystery to wrap itself in." Agatha set down her biscuit with exaggerated precision. "This has nothing to do with Wrinkles. My motivation is justice." "I believe that," Mrs. Blocksby said, "but motives often mix." Agatha's indignation flickered, softened, then rearranged itself into stubborn pride. "I am perfectly capable of separating vanity from murder." Mrs. Blocksby smiled. "I trust you. Just be careful." "I'm always careful." Mrs. Blocksby said nothing. Agatha drained her tea. "Fine. Often careful." Still nothing. "Sometimes careful." Now Mrs. Blocksby nodded. As Agatha left the vicarage and stepped into the quiet lane, her mind whirled. Off-book vials, missing paperwork, Marina's debts, Jill's trembling guilt, Paula's simmering hostility. Secrets were hiding everywhere in that clinic, and she would uncover every one. Agatha Raisin held the jar of advanced Wrinkle Night Renewal, platinum formula, as though she were weighing the future in her hands. £57, she muttered, turning the container over, for something that probably contains diluted wallpaper paste. Still, she had bought it. Paula had recommended it with the poise of a woman delivering a royal decree, and Agatha, determined to keep her cover as an ordinary hopeful client, had paid without flinching. By the time she arrived home, the evening light had mellowed into a gentle glow across her kitchen. The comforting smell of shepherd's pie filled the room, warm and homely, completely at odds with the sterile, cosmetic scent drifting from the cream. She set the jar on the table beside her dinner. Hodge sat perched on a chair, eyeing the newcomer with suspicion. "Well," Agatha said, unscrewing the lid with theatrical flair, "this is the miracle that shall restore me to my former glory." She dipped her finger in. The cream gleamed pearly white. Hodge leaned forward to sniff and recoiled dramatically, giving an offended little hiss before hopping down and stalking away. "Charming," Agatha muttered. "Even the cat thinks I'm mad." After dinner, she carried the jar to the bathroom and peered at her reflection. There, beneath the warm, forgiving light, the wrinkles still mocked her from the corner of her mouth. She dabbed the cream onto her skin, hesitant at first, then boldly, liberally, smoothing it along her jawline and cheeks. It smelled faintly chemical, with a sharp undertone the marketing label had disguised as fresh botanical essence. Agatha ignored that, and imagined her triumphant return to Castley life. Doris speechless, Mrs. Petrie envious, James Lacey struck temporarily dumb by her radiance. "Perfect," she murmured, applying a final swipe. She went to bed eagerly, swaddled in anticipation. But sometime in the small hours she woke. A burning sensation throbbed beneath her jawline, hot, prickling, and unmistakably wrong. She sat up, clutching her throat. The skin felt inflamed, tender, almost buzzing beneath her fingertips. She stumbled to the bathroom and snapped on the light. Her reflection stared back at her in horror. Her jawline was raw and red, angry with irritation. A strip of skin along her cheekbone looked almost raised like a welt. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Agatha cried. "I was promised younger skin, not spontaneous combustion." She rummaged frantically for cold water, splashing her face until droplets covered the sink. Nothing soothed it. Her irritation transformed swiftly into fury. "Paula is getting a piece of my mind," she muttered, "and possibly a chunk of my solicitor." Agatha barely slept after that. The moment dawn broke, she marched out of the house wrapped in a scarf that hid her jawline but not her rage. The clinic lobby appeared deceptively serene when she burst through the doors. Jill, who had been rearranging a shelf of moisturizers, jumped as though the shelf had shouted at her. "Mrs. Raisin, you're here early." "Yes," Agatha snapped, lowering the scarf to reveal the disaster beneath. "Look at this. Your precious cream has transformed my face into a bonfire. Jill gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my goodness, oh no! Paula appeared almost instantly, as though summoned by distress. What now, She stopped short, eyes narrowing at Agatha's inflamed skin. Her professional smile returned, brittle as glass. Mrs. Raisin, it appears you may have a rare sensitivity. Rare sensitivity? Agatha barked. It looks like I fell asleep on a barbecue. Please lower your voice, Paula hissed, darting nervous glances at nearby clients. This is quite unusual, but not unheard of. It is certainly unheard of for me, Agatha said. At that moment, Marina swept in, elegance disrupted by genuine alarm. What on earth? Mrs. Raisin, that looks extremely painful. It is, Agatha said through clenched teeth, and it came from your miracle cream. Marina held out a hand toward Paula. Give me the jar. Agatha tightened her grip on her handbag. You're not keeping it. I'm showing this to Bill Wong. Marina softened her tone. Please, I need to send it for laboratory analysis. The clinic must document any possible adverse reaction. Her eyes flickered with something Agatha couldn't read. Fear, perhaps, or desperation. It's standard procedure. Agatha hesitated. Jill stood by the counter, biting her lip, eyes darting from Marina to Paula to Agatha. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sleeve. Something in her expression, fearful, apologetic, secretive, made Agatha pause. Why, Agatha said slowly, do you want this so quickly? You haven't even asked how I applied it. Marina stepped closer. Because if there is a manufacturing fault or contamination, we need to prevent harm to anyone else. Please, Mrs. Raisin, let us handle this properly. It was the word contamination that tipped Agatha's decision. She relinquished the jar into Marina's elegant hands, watching closely as the doctor tucked it under her arm, almost protectively. Paula cleared her throat. Mrs. Raisin, I can offer you a milder product as a replacement. Oh no, you can't, Agatha snapped. My face is staging an uprising. I'm not putting anything near it. Paula inhaled sharply, offended. It is a reputable formulation. My skin disagrees, Marina intervened, her tone brisk. Paula, go prepare a client room. Jill, fetch a cooling compress. When the two women scurried away, Marina turned back to Agatha with a soft, apologetic expression. I am truly sorry this happened. I will personally follow up once the cream has been analysed. Agatha narrowed her eyes. Make sure you do. As Marina and Paula disappeared into the treatment corridor, Jill approached hesitantly with a damp cloth. I'm sorry, she whispered, offering it to Agatha. This shouldn't have happened. No, Agatha said, accepting the cloth. It shouldn't have, and yet it did. Jill swallowed hard. Her eyes seemed to search Agatha's for permission to speak, but then Paula re-emerged from a doorway, and Jill went rigid again. If you need anything else, she whispered quickly, you can come back any time. She hurried away before Agatha could question her further. Agatha left the clinic with the sting in her jawline matched only by the sting of suspicion. Someone had tampered with something. Whether out of carelessness or malice, she didn't yet know. She didn't get far down the street before Doris Simpson materialized beside her, flapping a shopping bag. Oh my goodness, Agatha, what happened to your face? Agatha glared. Nothing that concerns you. Looks like a chemical peel gone wrong, Doris said cheerfully. That's the danger of all these artificial things. I told you women try too hard. Doris, Agatha said slowly, if you don't walk away from me right now, I cannot be held responsible for my actions. Doris scuttled off, still smiling. Back home, Agatha held cold compresses against her skin while Hodge watched from a safe distance. Even he seemed wary. After a while, Agatha decided she needed advice from someone sensible, Mrs. Bloxby. The vicar's wife welcomed her with the gentleness of a woman used to tending both bruised egos and actual bruises. "Come in, dear," she murmured. "You look as though you've had a trying morning." Agatha collapsed into a chair. "The clinic nearly cooked my face." Mrs. Bloxby examined her jawline with sympathetic eyes. "Oh my, that must have been very painful." "It was humiliating," Agatha corrected. "Which is worse." Mrs. Bloxby poured tea and hesitated before speaking. "I happened to see an online discussion last night, a small review forum. Someone anonymously claimed that the clinic's treatments are occasionally stronger than advertised." Agatha's eyes widened. "Stronger?" "Yes. They said their skin blistered after a booster injection. They were told it was a normal reaction, but they felt something was off. Agatha leaned back, thoughts racing. So someone might be tampering with products? It's possible, Mrs. Bloxby said gently. Whether out of negligence or something deliberate, I cannot say. Agatha considered Marina, whose alarm earlier had looked genuine. She considered Paula, cold, controlled, irritable, always managing the stock. She considered Jill, frightened, furtive, glancing at everyone as though expecting reprimand or rescue. And she considered her cream jar, now in Marina's possession, its label slightly crooked as though tampered with. Mrs. Bloxby, she said at last, there is something deeply wrong at that clinic, and I intend to uncover what. Mrs. Bloxby nodded, though her expression held concern. Just be cautious, dear. Beauty is a dangerous business when vanity and fear become entangled. Vanity? Agatha huffed. I'm well beyond vanity. Mrs. Bloxby offered a small smile. Of course you are. As Agatha left the vicarage and headed home, the cold air soothed her burning skin, but it did nothing to calm the increasingly certain suspicion growing inside her. The clinic wasn't merely disorganized. Someone within it was dangerous, and Agatha Raisin would not stop until she found out why. The clinic after hours looked nothing like the glossy sanctuary Agatha had visited before. Without clients drifting in and out or soft music filtering through the speakers, the building felt eerily hollow, a place stripped of its charm and left with only its bones. The reception lights were dimmed to a muted glow, and the hum of unseen machinery pulsed through the quiet like a heartbeat. Even the scent had changed. Instead of perfumed candles, the air smelled faintly of cleaning agents and cold metal. I say, Charles murmured as he stepped inside, his suede shoes whispering against the polished floor, this place is positively sinister when it's empty. Good, Agatha replied, straightening the borrowed white coat that hung awkwardly on her shoulders. Perhaps we'll finally see what's hiding underneath all that polish. You do realize you look more like a disgruntled dentist than an investor assistant? Agatha glared. I look official. You look as though you mugged a retiring hygienist. Before she could retort, Paula appeared from the corridor, beaming with sudden, unsettling warmth. Mr. Fraith, Mrs. Raisin, so pleased you could join us this evening. Her hair was scraped into a severe bun, and her lipstick was too bright against the stark lighting. She held out a manicured hand. Dr. Vale sends her apologies. She had an urgent call but will join us shortly. Charles adopted his smoothest aristocratic charm. No trouble at all. I simply wish to discuss the clinic's potential for expansion. It seems an admirable enterprise. Paula preened. We pride ourselves on excellence. Agatha took out her notebook with a flourish. And on transparency, I assume. Paula's smile flickered. Naturally. Jill, notably, was nowhere to be seen. She's been sent home early, Paula said when Agatha asked. She wasn't feeling well. Agatha didn't miss the tension under the explanation. Paula began leading them down a corridor, darkness pooling in the corners despite the recessed lights. The doors on either side were firmly shut, each labelled in neat metallic script. Our after-hours protocols are strict, Paula said. Equipment must remain calibrated. Temperature controls for our products are monitored continuously. Her voice took on a rehearsed cadence. Clients expect perfection. And are they recorded as they arrive? Agatha interjected casually. Paula blinked. Recorded? Whatever do you mean? Charles stepped in smoothly. My associate merely refers to standard security procedures. Cameras, that sort of thing. Of course, Paula said, but something tightened in her posture. As they reached the end of the corridor, Charles paused, pointing to a control panel glowing faintly. What's this? Our alarm and monitoring system, Paula replied. Very advanced. The clinic is protected at all times. Agatha studied the panel with interest. Along the ceiling, tiny circular discs, so unobtrusive she might never have noticed them, were spaced at intervals. Surveillance. But the placement was odd, not facing entrances but angled down the hallways, enough to catch clients walking in or out of private rooms. Paula's eyes flickered upward and back again. For safety, she said quickly. We've had break-ins in the past. Really? Agatha asked. That's not something Marina mentioned. Paula's jaw tensed. It was before her time. Charles clapped his hands together. Shall we begin, then? I'd like to know more about your turnover projections. Always good to understand where profit meets potential. Paula practically glowed. This way, Mr. Fraith. I have the documents ready in my office. She led Charles through a side door, her voice rising in animated detail about revenue trends. Agatha waited for the door to click shut, then scanned the hallway. Quiet. Still. Time to move. She slipped down the corridor with stealth she hadn't displayed since sneaking into James Lacey's garden to inspect whether he had taken up vegetable gardening with a woman. Tonight she moved with purpose, glancing over her shoulder before trying each doorknob. All locked. Until she reached a small, nondescript office near the VIP lounge. The door yielded an inch. Agatha slipped inside. The room was barely larger than a broom cupboard, illuminated only by the faint glow of a desk lamp left on. A filing cabinet sat against the wall, one drawer not properly closed. A computer hummed softly. Papers littered the desk in haphazard piles, rare disorder in a clinic otherwise obsessed with immaculate surfaces. Agatha's pulse quickened. She pulled the drawer open carefully. Inside lay a nest of secrets. Digital storage devices, small black drives, labelled only with dates, a stack of printed photographs, personal files bound with metal clips. Agatha reached for the photographs first, flipping through them with rising shock. Images of clients entering the clinic, a woman wiping tears from her eyes as she left, a man glancing around nervously, unaware of the camera overhead. Agatha's breath caught as she reached the final cluster, close-up shots of Belinda Hartley, not glamorous, not airbrushed, stark, unflattering, invasive. Her jawline puffy, her eyes lined, a raw, vulnerable expression captured by someone who knew she would never want these images public. These, Agatha whispered, are not for medical records. Her stomach tightened. This was surveillance. Quiet, systematic, perhaps leveraged for persuasion or blackmail. She set the photographs aside and reached for the files. One paper immediately caught her eye, a typed document titled Confidential, Private Arrangements. Her eyes skimmed the lines. Client BH requests ongoing free treatments in exchange for discretion. Risk of negative publicity if terms not upheld. Cash payments approved. Agatha sucked in a breath. So Belinda had threatened exposure, and someone here had paid to keep her quiet. She flipped to another sheet. BH threatening exposure unless provided with ongoing free treatments and cash. Risk escalating. Suggest alternative resolution. Alternative resolution. A cold shiver slid down her back. That phrase reeked of menace. She reached for the drawer again, meaning to check for more, when the faintest sound, footsteps, echoed down the hallway. Agatha's pulse spiked. She shoved the papers back, shoved the drawer shut, and darted behind the desk just as the office door opened. Paula Trent stepped inside. She didn't look angry. She looked pleasant, which was far more alarming. "Mrs. Raisin," Paula said lightly, her smile stretched too tightly. "Are you lost?" Agatha rose slowly, adjusting the oversized white coat with theatrical irritation. "Of course not. I was looking for the ladies' room." Paula's eyes gleamed with thinly veiled amusement. "Naturally. One does tend to mistake administrative offices for toilets. Very common problem." Agatha forced a laugh. "All these identical white doors. It's like a maze designed by someone who hates people." Paula stepped closer. Too close. "You know, Mrs. Raisin, you and Mr. Fraith are quite fascinating. Investors don't usually explore unannounced." Agatha held her ground. "I prefer to see the full picture. If I'm to advise Charles on investment, I need to understand the operational layout." "Oh," Paula said softly, "you have quite the eye for detail, don't you?" The words carried a hint of threat. Agatha's fingers dug into her notebook. "I do." Paula tilted her head. "Dr. Vale would be delighted to answer your questions. Perhaps we should fetch her." "Oh, don't trouble her," Agatha said hastily. "Charles is the one with the investment brain. I'm merely decorative." She gave an unconvincing flutter of eyelashes. For a moment, Paula simply stared. Then she stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "Shall we return to the main corridor?" Agatha walked past her without looking back. As they approached the office where Charles was holding court, Paula's pleasant facade returned, bright but brittle. She opened the door for Agatha and Charles, who was flourishing through a question about quarterly projections. "There you are, Aggie," Charles said brightly. "Did you find the facilities?" "Eventually," Agatha replied. This place is terribly confusing. Paula said nothing, but her eyes lingered on Agatha a moment too long. Marina arrived minutes later, offering apologies and a serene smile. "Mr. Fraith, I hear you're interested in partnering with us. I'd be happy to arrange a full presentation." Charles launched into his aristocratic investor routine, but Agatha only half listened. Her mind was still in that small office, the surveillance photos, the hush money notes, the suggestion of alternative resolution. Belinda Hartley had been a problem someone here had intended to eliminate. When the tour concluded and Paula finally escorted them out, Agatha breathed the outside air as though emerging from underwater. The night wrapped Castley in cool quiet, utterly at odds with the clinic's oppressive stillness. "Well," Charles asked, unlocking his car, "did you find anything?" Agatha tightened her coat around her. "Yes," she said softly, "and whatever is happening in that clinic has nothing to do with beauty and everything to do with fear." Bill Wong arrived in Castley with the unmistakable posture of a man carrying something heavy, not physically, but morally. His usually neat hair looked rumpled, and the lines around his mouth were drawn tighter than usual. Agatha spotted him from Mrs. Bloxby's front window and nearly flung the door open before he had a chance to knock. "Bill," she exclaimed, "why are you skulking like a man delivering tragic news? Come in, come in." Mrs. Bloxby ushered them both inside, the vicarage warm with the scent of freshly baked scones. Bill accepted a cup of tea with the solemnity of a man steadying his nerves. Agatha stared at him impatiently. "Well, out with it. What have you found?" Bill exhaled. "I had our department dig into Marina Vale's background, or rather, the woman we know as Marina Vale." Agatha leaned forward, triumph sparkling in her eyes. "Aha, I knew it. She's a fraud, a liar, possibly a murderer." Mrs. Bloxby placed a calming hand on Agatha's arm, but Bill continued grimly. "Her real name isn't exactly Marina Vale. It's Marina Valenzuela. She worked at a cosmetic clinic abroad about 7 years ago. That clinic had a troubling incident." Agatha's heart pounded with vindication. "A death?" Bill nodded. "A woman undergoing a minor rejuvenation procedure died unexpectedly. The official records are unclear, but there were rumours. Missing consent forms, altered treatment logs, questions about whether protocols were followed." Agatha clapped her hands, ignoring Mrs. Bloxby's wince. "There! Proof! She's done it before." "Agatha," Bill warned, "it's not that simple. The clinic never brought charges. The case was closed as a tragic medical complication. Marina left quietly. She resurfaced here under a slightly altered name. That's all." "That's all?" Agatha nearly choked. "A woman died under suspicious circumstances. How can you say that's all?" Bill's expression hardened. "Because we cannot draw a line between two separate incidents without evidence." "But it's a pattern," Agatha insisted. "Shady clinic, dubious products, missing paperwork, a patient dead." Mrs. Bloxby spoke softly. "Perhaps there is truth in what Bill says. We mustn't jump to conclusions." Agatha huffed, irritated by their mildness. "Well, I'm not waiting for evidence to stroll up my garden path. I'm confronting her." "Agatha," Bill began, but she was already grabbing her coat. The clinic felt even colder than usual when Agatha marched through the doors. The receptionist looked startled. Paula was nowhere in sight. Marina stood near the consultation desk, flipping through a stack of records with the careful, exhausted movements of someone trying to hold her world together. "Dr. Vale," Agatha said sharply. Marina looked up. Her expression froze, then composed itself into professionalism. "Mrs. Raisin, your skin, how is it?" "Burning with righteous fury," Agatha said. "We need to talk, now." Marina glanced around. "Perhaps in my office." "No," Agatha said, voice rising. "Here. You lied about your past." A hush fell over the lobby. A nurse stopped mid-step. A client turned in her chair. Marina's cheeks blanched. "Please lower your voice." "Oh no," Agatha said fiercely. "Not after what I've discovered. A dead patient in your previous clinic, missing forms, altered records, and you skulk back to England as Marina Vale instead of Marina Valenzuela." Marina closed her eyes briefly, as though bracing against a blow. When she opened them again, she looked older, not in skin, but in spirit. "Yes," she said quietly, "what you have discovered is true." Agatha faltered. She had not expected such an immediate confession. Marina continued in a low, tired voice. A woman died in that clinic. It was a tragedy. I was supervising, but a colleague administered the procedure. He blamed me when complications arose. I believed him. I was young, too eager to please, too afraid to challenge authority. You altered records, Agatha said accusingly. I didn't know he had until it was too late, and then— She swallowed. Then the clinic covered it up. They feared scandal. They asked me to leave quietly. Agatha crossed her arms. How convenient. Marina's eyes glistened, not with tears but with humiliation. I changed my name so I could rebuild my life. You cannot imagine how difficult it is to get employment after such rumors. And you expect me to believe you've magically become ethical? For the first time, Marina's composure cracked. I have made mistakes, she whispered. I have cut corners, renaming cheaper treatments, simplifying descriptions for clients who didn't understand the technology. But I have never harmed anyone deliberately. I'm terrified of losing everything again. Is that why you paid off Belinda Hartley? Marina blinked. Paid her off? Agatha hesitated. Too long. Marina's eyes narrowed. What exactly do you think I've done? This isn't a courtroom, Agatha snapped, stung by the sudden realization she might lack proof. It's called intuition. Oh, Marina said coldly, then your intuition is wrong. They stood locked in mutual loathing, but beneath Marina's anger there was something else, fear, raw and unvarnished. Before Agatha could respond, Charles entered through the side door, waving several sheets of paper. Aggie, I found something interesting. Oh dear, are we interrupting a duel? Charles, Agatha said, tell her. He adjusted his scarf dramatically. Well, it seems the financial accounts of this establishment are, how shall I put it, more creative than most theatrical budgets. Marina stiffened. Explain. There are cash withdrawals, Charles said, labelled consultancy fees. No, my favourite, a private fund marked only client relations. Rather a large, slushy bucket of money, if you ask me. That fund, Marina said slowly, is not managed by me. Then by whom? Agatha demanded. Marina's lips pressed into a line. Paula handles all financial outflows. She insists on managing supplier negotiations, stock orders, everything. Agatha blinked. The ground beneath her shifted slightly. Paula? Yes, Marina said. She has a gift for organization and persuasion. Agatha scoffed. She has a gift for hostility. Marina looked away. She is difficult, but efficient. Efficient enough, Charles added, to move a great deal of money with no explanation. A door creaked. Jill appeared from the staff kitchenette, pale and thin as steam. She startled when she saw them. Jill, Agatha said, we need answers. Jill hugged her arms tightly, gaze darting between Marina and Charles. I'm not supposed to. Please, Marina said softly. If you know something, it may help. Jill's eyes filled with tears. You're strict with us, Dr. Vale, she whispered, but you're fair. You don't let Paula bully us, and you don't let her— She broke off. Agatha moved closer. Don't let her what? Jill's voice dropped. Handle the hush money meetings alone. Agatha's breath caught. Meetings? Jill nodded miserably. Whenever a client complained about a treatment being too strong or said they might leave a bad review, Paula insisted they meet privately. Sometimes she gave them refunds, sometimes cash. Sometimes she asked them to sign things. She said it protected the clinic from slander. Marina swayed. She did what? You didn't know? Jill whispered. Marina's shock was too raw to fake. Charles murmured, Well, that's rather telling. Agatha's heart pounded. And Belinda Hartley? Did Paula meet with her? Jill scrubbed a tear from her cheek. Yes, twice. Belinda shouted both times. She said she'd expose the clinic. She said she'd ruin Dr. Vale's reputation internationally. So Paula handled her, Charles said. How convenient. Jill shook her head frantically. No, Paula said Belinda wanted money, lots of it, and free treatments. She said Belinda was threatening us all. Agatha crossed her arms tightly. And when Belinda died, Paula just happened to be in the clinic, just happened to take control of the scene, just happened to send you home early. Jill's breath hitched. I didn't think. Marina was trembling now. "Jill, why didn't you tell me?" "Because Paula said you would fire me," Jill whispered. "She said you hated drama." Marina closed her eyes, devastated. Agatha inhaled sharply, her mind racing. Paula with access to money, Paula managing products, Paula handling complaints, Paula arranging hush money, Paula controlling stockrooms, Paula who had been hostile to Agatha and terrified of scrutiny, and Paula who had been the first to insist Belinda's death was an allergic reaction. The red herring of Marina's past now glowed in hindsight. Important, colourful, misleading. Paula was rising to the top of the suspect list. Agatha pointed a finger at Marina. "You'd better hope you're telling the truth, because if Paula is the one pulling the strings, then someone is framing you or using your past to hide their present crimes." Marina looked stricken. "I never wanted this. I only wanted a second chance." Agatha believed her. To her horror, she believed her. Charles laid a hand lightly on Agatha's shoulder. "So, Aggie, what next?" Agatha straightened, face fierce. "What next? We find out exactly what Paula is hiding, and we do it before she realizes we're onto her." In the dead quiet that followed, the hum of the clinic's machines sounded almost sinister. Somewhere in those sterile walls, Paula was moving pieces Agatha hadn't yet seen. But Agatha Raisin had finally found her target, and nothing, Wrinkles, vanity, or danger would stop her now. Agatha Raisin had always believed that killers were like wasps. Once they'd stung, they tended to circle back to the same nest, desperate to ensure their work had succeeded. And in the quiet hours after her confrontation with Marina, another truth had struck her with brutal clarity. If Belinda Hartley had been silenced because someone feared incriminating photographs, then whoever had taken those photographs would worry that copies still existed, and worry could make a desperate person strike again. She telephoned Charles at once. He was in the bath with a glass of wine. "My dear girl," he said languidly, "you always pick the most intimate moments." "Someone may try to kill you," Agatha replied. "How's that for intimacy?" There was a splash as he sat upright. "Explain." And she did, her words tumbling over one another. The surveillance photos, the hush money notes, Paula's control of stock, the crooked labels, the death that looked less like an accident and more like a warning gone wrong. Charles listened with a mixture of admiration and horror. "Well," he said at last, "how thrillingly grim." Agatha sighed. "We need bait, and since the killer thinks you're an investor, you're perfect." "Perfect for what?" "To pretend you've acquired copies of those photographs, and that you're willing to negotiate." Charles considered this. Blackmailing a blackmailer. "Aggie, I feel positively alive." "You should feel terrified." "Oh, I do," he said, "but also alive." Agatha called Bill next. He arrived at her cottage 30 minutes later, coat unbuttoned, expression thunderous. "A trap," he said. "Agatha, no." "Yes," she replied. "You said yourself this case stinks. Let's follow the smell." Bill glowered. "I'm not putting Charles Fraith in harm's way." "I'm volunteering," Charles said brightly from the sofa. "That's what worries me," Bill muttered. But Agatha pressed on, relentless. "If someone believes Charles has the photos, they'll panic. They'll act. And when they do, you and your officers will be there." Bill rubbed his face. "We'd need a controlled environment." "The clinic," Agatha said, "where Paula always insists on administering injections herself." Charles raised a hand. "Just to be clear, are we sure Paula is the killer?" "No," Agatha admitted, "but she's the one with access, the one handling money, the one hiding meetings, the one switching products." "And the one with the warm bedside manner of a prison guard," Charles added. Bill sighed heavily. "Fine, I'll arrange officers, but we do this carefully." "Carefully," Agatha repeated, already planning something less than that. The clinic that evening felt like the stage of an abandoned theatre awaiting a final act. Fluorescent lights cast long, cold shadows. The reception area was deserted except for a single potted plant that looked as though someone had recently forgotten to water it. Charles arrived first, immaculately dressed in a dark blazer, scarf artfully draped, expression full of calculated arrogance. Agatha, lurking behind the glass entry partition, watched him with grudging admiration. No one did wealthy and indiscreet quite like Charles Fraith. Paula stepped forward from the shadows with a clinical smile. "Mr. Fraith, we're delighted you've returned." Charles gave a lazy nod. Thought I'd try one of your more. He paused, letting his eyes glide meaningfully around the hallway. Advanced treatments this evening. Paula's smile sharpened. Of course. And you mentioned on the phone you wanted to discuss some private matters? Charles pretended not to notice the calculating gleam in her eyes. Yes, a delicate matter of certain photographs someone thought I'd pay handsomely for. Of course, I have no intention of encouraging blackmail, but I thought, as a potential investor... Paula's face didn't twitch, but Agatha felt the temperature shift. I see, Paula said smoothly. We can speak after your procedure. Capital, Charles replied. Agatha, hidden in the consultation room next door, gripped her notebook so tightly it bent. Her state-of-the-art mobile phone, a clunky brick with an unreliable antenna, lay on the table beside her. Bill and 3 officers waited outside in unmarked cars, ready for her signal. She only hoped the signal wouldn't drop halfway through the climax, as it usually did when she needed the device least. From her spot, she watched through a narrow crack in the door. Paula led Charles down the hallway. Her movements were too graceful for someone merely doing her job, her voice too controlled. Agatha had seen that walk before, the walk of a person rehearsing. Agatha slipped out as soon as they turned a corner, moving quickly toward the treatment prep room. The stainless steel counters gleamed under harsh lighting. A trolley had been laid out with swabs, syringes, and carefully labelled vials. Except one. Agatha froze. A vial sat on the middle tray, its label slightly crooked, tilted just enough to catch the eye of someone looking for discrepancy, exactly like the misaligned label on her night cream jar. Her heart hammered. She watched as Paula strode into the room, opened the locked fridge with effortless confidence, and removed a second vial. With swift, practiced movements, she switched it with the crooked labelled vial on the tray. Agatha gasped silently. She knew exactly what she was seeing. Intent, purpose, premeditation. Paula scooped up the tainted vial and tucked it casually into her coat pocket before leaving the room. And then she went to fetch Charles. Agatha didn't wait. She launched herself out of hiding and sprinted down the corridor just as Paula guided Charles into the procedure room. "Stop!" Agatha shouted, bursting through the door. Charles flinched. Paula went rigid. Agatha snatched the syringe from Paula's tray and held it aloft like a smoking gun. "I know what you've done." Paula stared at her, expression flat. "Mrs. Raisin, you cannot be in here. You were about to inject him with something dangerous." "That," Paula said coolly, "is isotonic filler solution." "It is no such thing," Agatha barked. "I saw you switch the vial." Paula's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Raisin, you are mistaken. I was preparing. That's enough." Bill Wong's voice sliced through the room. He stepped inside with 2 officers. His expression was grim, controlled, and entirely without humor. "Paula Trent," he said, "we've just searched your locker." Paula's nostrils flared, not with fear, with calculation. Bill continued, "We found several vials with altered chemical compositions, falsified inventory sheets, and sealed product batches that don't match supplier records. We know you've been tampering." Paula exhaled slowly, almost in relief. Then her shoulders dropped, and a strange, unsettling calm washed over her face. "So," she said softly, "it's over." Charles blinked. "Is she confessing? Can we all appreciate I nearly died in the name of investigative theatre?" Agatha ignored him. "Why, Paula?" she demanded. "Why kill Belinda? Why tamper with my cream? Why go after Charles?" Paula reached for a chair and sat down with eerie composure. "Kill?" she repeated. "Such an ugly word. I never meant to kill anyone." "No killer ever does," Agatha shot back. "I didn't," Paula insisted. "I adjusted treatments, enhanced them, just enough to create outcomes." "What outcomes?" Bill asked sharply. Paula clasped her hands. "Emergencies, scares, reactions that would send clients running back for more expensive corrective procedures. A rash, a swelling, a minor shock. Nothing fatal." Agatha's skin crawled. "You were hurting people for profit." Paula tilted her head. "Not hurting, incentivizing." "Belinda Hartley died," Bill said coldly. "Explain that." Paula's facade cracked at last. Her voice trembled. "I only meant to frighten her. She threatened the clinic, threatened Marina, threatened the staff. She said she had recorded evidence from the CCTV and would release it unless she received money and unlimited treatments. "So you poisoned her?" Agatha demanded. "I enhanced her booster injection," Paula whispered. "Only slightly. She was meant to react, to panic, to think twice before blackmailing us. She wasn't meant to—" Her voice broke. "I misjudged. Her system was weaker than I realized." Bill stepped forward. "And Charles? What was tonight supposed to be?" Paula wiped her eyes. "You said he had photographs. Proof. I had to protect the clinic." "Protect?" Agatha snapped. "Or protect yourself?" Paula didn't answer. Charles cleared his throat delicately. "Forgive me, but has anyone noticed that I remained extremely brave through this ordeal?" "Shush, Charles," Agatha said without looking at him. Paula turned her gaze toward Agatha. "I didn't tamper with your night cream intentionally. I was adjusting batches. Some went out before they were properly tested. I thought the reactions would be mild. Temporary." "Temporary?" Agatha repeated, outraged. "My face tried to detach itself." Paula seemed genuinely remorseful. "You weren't the target." "Belinda was," Agatha said quietly. "And when she threatened to expose the surveillance photos, you panicked." Paula nodded, defeated. "I had access to everything. Formulations, stock, money. Marina trusted me. Too much." Agatha realized, with a small jolt of pity, that Paula had convinced herself this was loyalty. Twisted, misguided, fatal loyalty. She had believed she was saving the clinic from scandal, unaware she had become the very scandal. Bill signaled the officers. They moved in to handcuff her gently. Paula didn't resist. She simply watched the clinic lights flicker overhead, as though seeing the place clearly for the first time. "It was never meant to be deadly," she whispered. "I only wanted the clinic to succeed." As Paula was escorted out, the room fell silent. Charles let out a long breath. "Well, Aggie, remind me never to volunteer for your schemes again." Agatha felt exhaustion seep into her bones. "Charles," she murmured, "you were magnificent bait." He preened. "Always happy to serve." Bill approached Agatha slowly. "You nearly got yourself and Charles killed." "But we caught her," Agatha said. "Yes," Bill admitted, "because of you. But next time—" "There won't be a next time," Agatha said. Bill raised a skeptical brow. She sighed. "Fine. Probably there will." The clinic, so bright and sterile in daylight, now felt like a place that had exhaled long-held secrets. The crooked labels, the missing patch tests, the hush-money letters, the panic in Paula's eyes. All the pieces aligned at last, and Marina, flawed, vain, frightened, had not been the monster after all. Agatha turned to Charles. "Let's go home. I need a drink." "A strong one," Charles agreed. As they stepped outside into the cool night, Agatha felt the peculiar glow that came from solving something dark. Not triumph, but clarity. Beauty could hide rot. Vanity could hide fear. And sometimes it took a determined, meddlesome woman with a notebook to drag the truth into the light. Mercester's cafe district was unusually lively for a weekday afternoon, full of office workers escaping their desks and retirees debating the merits of scones versus toasted tea cakes. Bill Wong had chosen a small corner bistro with gingham tablecloths and bright windows, a place that looked cozy enough to soften harsh truths and neutral enough for an official debrief. Agatha wasn't fooled. She'd seen that particular expression on Bill's face before, a mixture of resignation, duty, and a faint dread of whatever she might say next. She swept into the restaurant with Charles trailing behind her, both of them radiating a self-congratulatory glow. Bill looked up from the paperwork he'd been reviewing and sighed. "Dear God," he muttered, "you've both come in smiling. That can only mean trouble." "Not trouble," Agatha declared, sliding into the seat opposite him. "Vindication." Charles took the seat beside her with a flourish. "We solved a murder, Bill. Well, we assisted. You did the dull legal parts." Bill folded his arms. "Sit. Drink your tea. Then let me explain exactly how many rules the two of you nearly obliterated." Agatha ignored the reprimand and waved the waiter over. "I'll have the chicken salad and a gin and tonic. Charles?" "Same, but with more gin." Bill stared at them both. "It's 2 in the afternoon." Agatha sniffed. "We've had a week." Once the drinks arrived, Bill settled into his slow, methodical rhythm, the one he used when he needed to walk Agatha through facts before she could reframe them into something spectacularly inaccurate. "So," he began, "let's go through it. Paula Trent is in custody and has already begun giving statements. Her confession is consistent with what we found. Falsified inventory, altered batches, unregistered formulations, and proof she handled all client relations payments without Marina's oversight." Agatha beamed. "Yes, well, I did say Paula was the real villain." Bill held up a hand. "Agatha, at one point you were convinced Marina was a murderer." "That was earlier," she said airily, "before I recalibrated." Charles chuckled. "Her calibrations are very impressive when they finally land in the right place." Bill continued. "Paula admitted to tampering with certain product lines. She'd dilute expensive solutions with cheaper additives or switch out formulations entirely. She did it to save money and to push clients toward corrective treatments." "Which is monstrous," Agatha declared. Bill nodded. "Yes, and illegal, and dangerous. But that wasn't her motivation for Belinda Hartley." Agatha leaned forward. "That was about blackmail." "Partly," Bill said. "Belinda had uncovered the clinic's hidden recordings, the photos, the footage, all stored without client consent. She threatened to expose it. She also threatened to expose Marina's past." "Marina's past," Agatha repeated, shaking her head. "I was so sure it proved her guilt." "Marina's past," Bill said gently, "proved only her insecurity and desperation to rebuild her career. Paula saw an opportunity in that. She convinced Marina that certain client relations payments were normal business practice. Marina was vain, careless, and naive, but she wasn't malicious." Agatha grimaced. She hated being wrong, even in small doses. "I suppose she'll lose her license." Bill sighed. "It's likely, but she won't face criminal charges for Belinda's death. Paula's confession clears her on that count." Charles stirred his tea thoughtfully. "So Marina's sin was vanity, and Paula's was ambition." "And greed," Bill added. "And fear." Agatha lifted her chin. "Fear doesn't excuse attempted murder." "No," Bill agreed, "it does not." He tapped a few notes. "Paula said she meant only to frighten Belinda, to create a dramatic but reversible reaction, a scare tactic. She miscalculated the dosage." Agatha shuddered. "It could have been Charles." Charles looked offended. "I was quite aware of the risks." "You faint at flu jabs." "That happened once," Charles said stiffly, "when I hadn't eaten." Bill cleared his throat. "As for the night cream incident, Paula admitted to adjusting batches the day before Belinda's fatal appointment. The cream you purchased came from a batch she says she hadn't fully neutralized." Her words. Agatha felt her jaw prickle at the memory. "Neutralized. It nearly dissolved my face." "You were lucky," Bill said. "It could have been much worse." Agatha didn't like that. Not one bit. Her ego had been bruised, but her safety? She hadn't realized until now how close she'd come to being another tragic case. Bill noticed her shift. He softened his tone. "Agatha, you do understand Paula chose you because you were snooping." Agatha bristled. "I wasn't snooping. I was investigating." "That's literally what snooping is," Bill said. Charles leaned back, smiling. "She does it beautifully, though." Agatha gave him a pointed look, but she couldn't hide the flicker of discomfort beneath her pride. Paula had seen her insecurity, used it, exploited the very vanity Agatha had been wrestling with since the wrinkle first appeared. Charles nudged her elbow. "Don't look so tragic. Your face survived." "Barely." "And you look marvelous," she sniffed. "Flattery will not distract me from the truth." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Which truth is that?" Agatha hesitated for a long moment. "That, perhaps I let the wrinkle push me toward foolishness. I wanted to regain something I thought I'd lost. I became an easy target." Bill sipped his tea. "Agatha, you risked your life for fewer wrinkles." She scowled. "Oh, for heaven's sake." Charles burst out laughing. Bill continued, amusement in his voice now. "You're clever, tenacious, brave, but sometimes your vanity blinds you." "Are you finished?" she snapped. "Almost. You also nearly got yourself killed breaking into restricted areas, confronting Marina alone, and bursting into a medical room mid-procedure." Agatha waved this off. "And yet, here we are. Case solved." Bill leaned back. "Yes, and thank you. Truly. Your instincts helped bring Paula down. Just, next time, perhaps call me before staging your own covert operation." "There won't be a next time," Agatha said automatically. Both men stared at her. She sighed. "Fine. There might be, but I'll try to be marginally more sensible." Charles patted her hand. "That's the most unrealistic promise you've made today." Agatha swatted him. "At least I did something. What did you do besides almost die?" "I died beautifully," Charles replied. Bill rubbed his temples. "Please stop encouraging each other." Their food arrived, and for a few moments the only sounds were cutlery and the soft chatter of nearby tables. Agatha felt her shoulders loosen. The crisis was over. Paula was in custody. Belinda's death would be properly recorded and acknowledged. And Marina... "What will happen to Marina?" Agatha asked quietly. Bill looked at the tablecloth. "Professional ruin, most likely. She'll be disciplined, perhaps retrained. Her reputation will be damaged, but she isn't a criminal. She was manipulated, blindsided, and vain, not homicidal." Agatha nodded slowly. "She didn't deserve to lose everything." "People seldom do," Mrs. Bloxby said gently as she approached their table. Agatha blinked. "Mrs. Bloxby, what are you doing here?" "I came to check on you." She smiled warmly. "And to order cake." Charles clasped his hands dramatically. "An excellent idea." Once the vicar's wife was seated, Bill summarized the case. She listened without judgment, her expression softening at the mention of Marina's misguided choices. "Poor woman," Mrs. Bloxby murmured. "She did wrong, certainly, but she was also a victim of her own fear." Agatha snorted. Fear and vanity, a deadly combination. Mrs. Bloxby turned her kind gaze toward Agatha. "And what have you learned, dear?" Agatha opened her mouth, then closed it. She fiddled with her fork. "I suppose," she said finally, "that chasing youth is, well, not worth dying for." Charles grinned. "Bravo." Agatha shot him a glare. "And that a few lines on one's face aren't quite the tragedy I imagined." Mrs. Bloxby nodded approvingly. "Every line tells a story." Agatha rolled her eyes. "I prefer mine to tell stories of competence, not foolishness." Bill smirked. "Then stop running into danger without backup." "I'll consider it." "Which means no," Charles translated. Agatha lifted her chin. "Gentlemen, I have solved a murder, unmasked a saboteur, infiltrated a clinic, and avoided premature death. I think I'm entitled to a moment of grace." Mrs. Bloxby patted her hand. "You are entitled to many things, dear, but humility may not be one of them." Agatha spluttered while Charles choked on laughter. Bill finally raised his teacup. "To Agatha Raisin, may she never lose her nerve, or her sense." Agatha clinked her glass against his. "To lines well earned." They drank together, an odd, mismatched group made whole by crisis and affection. Outside the window, the afternoon sun warmed the pavement, catching the faces of passers-by with gentle clarity. Every face had a story, even hers. And Agatha decided, privately, grudgingly, that she was ready to wear hers without fear. For now. Agatha Raisin arrived at the Castley WI meeting with the stride of a woman determined not to limp. She had spent the morning rehearsing a completely indifferent expression in the bathroom mirror, only to find her jaw still faintly pink. A lesser woman might have stayed home, but Agatha Raisin was not a lesser woman. She was a vain, stubborn, battle-worn champion of personal reinvention, and, far more importantly, if she didn't show up today, Doris Simpson would win. The WI hall was unusually full, its folding chairs arranged in optimistic rows. Someone had attempted to create an atmosphere of quiet elegance by placing a vase of drooping carnations on the front table. The effect was one of mild defeat. Agatha took her seat with a theatrical sigh, removing her coat to reveal a crisp navy blouse, chosen for its ability to flatter, distract, and announce. Agatha Raisin has survived something, and she looks marvelous doing it. Doris Simpson, perched 2 chairs away, turned with a simper so sweet it could rot wood. "Oh, hello, Agatha. You're looking better." She delivered the final word with delicate cruelty. Agatha gave her a smile sharp enough to trim hedges. "Thank you, Doris. I always recover quickly, part of my natural resilience." Mrs. Bloxby, blessedly seated between them, intervened with mild haste. "Shall we begin? Today's topic is embracing natural aging. I thought we might explore how confidence grows with experience. Agatha stiffened. She had been hoping for something less pointed, macrame perhaps, or the perennial favourite, fundraising ideas that require no work. Natural aging felt personal in a way she wasn't prepared to endure on a Wednesday afternoon, with lukewarm tea and Doris's smug nostrils flaring in anticipation. Yes, Doris chimed. Some of us have always believed in letting nature take its course. No powders, no potions, none of these artificial tricks. She shot Agatha a look of triumphant martyrdom. Agatha inhaled sharply through her nose. Well, Doris, nature has certainly taken its course with you. So thoroughly, in fact, that I dare say the rest of us needn't bother. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the hall. Mrs. Blocksby closed her eyes briefly, perhaps in prayer. Ladies, she said, our goal is kindness. There is a difference between caring for oneself and being deceived. What happened at the clinic was tragic, but it also reminds us that appearances are never the whole story. Agatha shifted in her seat. It was unfair, typical of Blocksby's gentle wisdom, to phrase things so impeccably that she couldn't argue without sounding like a monster. She took a sip of tea instead. The W.I.'s teapot, as usual, produced a brew somewhere between warm bath water and memories of tea. As the meeting droned on about self-esteem, facial exercises, and the benefits of simply accepting one's age, Agatha's mind drifted. She caught sight of her reflection in the grimy window beside her chair. The light was unflattering, but it softened certain edges, turning her familiar lines into, well, something less dire. Her jaw was still inflamed, yes, but there was an odd dignity to it, a battle scar rather than a blemish. For the first time in weeks, she studied herself without flinching. She saw a woman who had built a life from grit and ambition, who had faced down London advertising sharks, village gossip, blackmailing beauticians, and one particularly mortifying patch test demonstration. Her face, with its lines and imperfections, told a story that was unmistakably hers. The moment, miraculous, fleeting, was gone almost immediately. Agatha, Doris said patronizingly, you're awfully quiet, accepting your age at last. Agatha snapped the window shut, forcing the warped glass out of view. I'm accepting that you talk too much, Doris. That's quite enough acceptance for today. Mrs. Blocksby sighed, but her eyes were warm. Perhaps we all accept things in our own time. After the meeting concluded, and Agatha had glared Doris into a retreat, she walked home with a curious lightness. Hodge greeted her indignantly at the door, tail swishing like a metronome of disapproval. Yes, I'm late, Agatha said, bending to scratch his chin. But at least you don't care about Wrinkles. Hodge blinked once, which Agatha chose to interpret as unconditional love rather than feline disdain. She poured herself a modest cup of tea, her jaw still tingled if she drank wine, and settled at the kitchen table. The evening light cast a honeyed glow over the cluttered counters, the stray bits of post, and the ashtray she'd promised Mrs. Blocksby she was trying to give up. Everything felt reassuringly ordinary. The phone rang. She lunged for it, sloshing tea. Agatha Raisin. Charles's voice flowed through the receiver with its usual breezy charm. Darling Aggie, I'm calling with a truly irresistible proposition. If it involves money, flattery or trouble, I'm listening. A weekend away, luxurious amenities, absolute relaxation. He paused, milking the suspense. A new spa opening in Little Fenton, quite the buzz in the county. Rumour is they're offering revolutionary anti-aging treatments. Agatha groaned. Charles, I have just survived one clinic. Barely. I'm not stepping foot into another, ever. Of course not, he said smoothly. You're far too sensible for that. Still, they've launched a very glossy brochure. Would you like me to read the price list? Merely out of academic curiosity. No, Agatha snapped. Then, after a beat, all right, yes, go on. Charles laughed triumphantly. I knew it. Now, the first package is an exclusive. She held the phone away from her ear, pretending exasperation, but her heart was lighter than she wished to admit. If Charles was teasing her, things were returning to normal. If she felt tempted, only academically of course, then the fright at Marina Vale's clinic had not permanently scarred her sense of adventure. While Charles waxed lyrical about collagen-infused mineral pools, Agatha gazed again at her reflection in the darkened kitchen window. The lines were still there. So was the faint redness. So was the woman who had, against all expectation, solved a murder in the pursuit of beauty. She touched her jaw thoughtfully. "Charles," she interrupted, "tell me more about this detox mud wrap." "You're hooked already." "Don't be ridiculous. I'm only making sure you don't get scammed." "Ah, Aggie, promise me one thing." "What now?" "That if this place tries to kill me, you'll avenge my death with impeccable style." Agatha allowed herself a small smile. "Obviously." As the conversation rambled on, half mischief, half friendship, Agatha felt an unexpected swell of affection for the absurdity of it all. The clinics, the conspiracies, the vanity she refused to abandon, the village she insisted she didn't need. And at the centre of it, whether she liked it or not, was Agatha Raisin, cigarette in hand, too proud to age quietly, and too stubborn to give up meddling. Outside, Carsley hummed softly, a village unchanged by scandal yet somehow livelier for her presence. Tomorrow she would face new gossip, new battles, and perhaps, if Charles had his way, a new spar. But tonight, with Hodge purring at her feet and Charles chattering in her ear, Agatha Raisin allowed herself a rare, fleeting peace, wrinkles and all.